Hello, today I'm going to talk a bit about drawing with fountain pens. The tools you use to draw with can have a huge effect on your finished piece and your style in general. And the reason you might use a fountain pen is because they can have a lovely line quality. So for a comparison, we'll have this, which isn't a fountain pen, it's a fine liner. Let's have a look what sort of mark it makes. This is a Copic Multiliner. And it really doesn't have much in the way of, there's not much variation in its line quality, so it doesn't matter how fast or slow you draw, whether you press lightly or hard, it really just makes the same marks every time. So that's good for technical drawing and something where you want really clean, precise lines, but it doesn't have a lot of character. So if you're just out and about sketching, you might want something that does have some character. So try a fountain pen. This is a, what's this one called? A Jinhao X450. Sounds like a jet plane. But it's a cheap Chinese fountain pen with a gold nib. And for the money, I think it's about £10. It's surprisingly lovely. It's really quite smooth nib and it flows nicely, and you can see from these marks it's not just thicker than the other one, but it has some variety. So if I stop, you'll see a small pool of ink forms at the end, and it's just, yeah, it just has a bit of character. But if I press hard or lightly, it doesn't vary much. It's more of a continuous width most of the time, you know. It does vary slightly, but not very much. But it's nice to draw with. So to find something that's got lots of character, we'll quickly see what this dip pen can do. This is a very old nib. I'll just see if I can. I'm not a calligrapher, so please don't. Ooh. So there we are. As you can see, it's so long and bendy that you can get a huge variation in the line thickness. It really makes lovely marks, and you know, for sketching or something, it has a feel of a quill or something like that. It has a sort of period feel. You can almost imagine looking at Turner's sketchbooks or something like that and just seeing his quick thumbnail drawings. But yeah, it's kind of hard to beat a dip pen for expressive marks. The only problem with it is that you have to keep dipping it in a pot of ink to make it keep working. So it would be great to have a fountain pen that had could make these sorts of marks with a flexible nib that you could just fill with ink and not have to dip in anymore. So I was hoping that this would be one. This is called a Noodlers Ahab, like in Moby Dick, so maybe an exclamation mark. And this is supposed to have a flexible nib, and it does a bit, but you have to give it a fair amount of force to make it flex, and even then it's nowhere near where the dip pen was. So it does make nice marks. It's really nice to draw with, and it's lovely, but it's probably better suited to drawing in a small sketchbook, making smaller sketches. So if you have a small pocket book that you take around for your quick doodles when you're out and about, it would work very nicely. I think this is really good. It makes expressive marks, but small. So I was looking for something bigger and bolder, so I went back to my old art pen and I bought the biggest nib I could find for it. You can change these nibs. So this is a Rotring Art Pen with a BB nib, which is double broad or something. And you can see there's just gallons of ink gushing out of there. and you get really big marks. But you can get finer ones by tilting it a bit steeper, so there's a bit of variation in those lines. And also I found if you turn it upside down, then you can use it as a very fine pen and do some, so you can do your finer details with the pen upside down. It works perfectly fine, doesn't dry up or anything. And then for shadows and bolder areas, outlines, you can turn back over the other way. So that's a really versatile pen, and it's worth talking about the ergonomics too, because it's all plastic, so it's nice and light, and it's much longer than a normal pen. So that means I can hold it up here where I like to hold things when I'm drawing, without it falling in the gap of my hand, as usually happens. So that's been my favourite drawing pen for a long time. But I did keep looking around to see what else I could find, and I recently came across another Chinese pen. It's called a Duke 209, and it has a Fude nib. I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. Fude nib. And the nib, if you can see it close up, it's bent upwards. So it looks like I've dropped it on the floor, but I haven't. That's how it came. And the idea is that if you hold it steeply, you get finer lines, and as you flatten it out, you can get thicker lines, really thick lines. I mean, really good. It's not so good upside down, I don't think. It just, it kind of works, but it's more something you vary the steepness rather than rotating it. So that's a really good pen. But as you can see, it's quite small in my hand, and I can put the cap on, but then it starts to get heavy. And so I looked in my pen pot, and I realised that if I took the back off, I've got one of these Pilot parallel pens, which is for calligraphy. It screws on perfectly. It's the same thread size, and now it has the same size and weight as my art pen. So I'm very pleased about that, and it makes it a close contender for my favourite pen at the moment. So yeah, I can definitely recommend one of those for a bit of fun. And again, they're quite cheap. Which, is that a good thing? I'm not sure. And we can't finish up without talking about ink. So obviously the great thing about using a fountain pen is you can put your own ink in, and that might be different colours, or like this one, it's black but it's permanent, and that will allow me to add watercolour afterwards without the black running and making the paints muddy. So this particular one is made by Atramentis, and it's a document ink, and I'm really pleased with it. There's what's good about it is that I found that the pens I filled with it, even if I hadn't used them for a week or two, they didn't dry up. They could just carry on drawing a week or two later. Usually a fountain pen, if you don't use it for a while, will dry up, and you'll need a bit of a clean before you can use it again. So yeah, I could recommend that ink, and yeah, and these pens. But obviously pen size and nib types, it's very much a personal preference, so you have to do your own research and find what one suits you best. But I can definitely recommend using fountain pens as opposed to fine liners and things if you want to inject a bit of character to your drawings. So happy sketching, and get some inky fingers.